Bible study. Last week, in our time in Luke, you remember the disciples were walking through a cornfield with our Lord. Do y'all remember Jack in the Box? The little thing that you would wind up, it was a box, you would wind it up and it would make music, and then poof, the thing would scare you half to death. That's what this scene reminds me of. Pharisee in a box. Literally, Jesus is walking through a cornfield with his disciples, and pop, come the Pharisees, literally out of nowhere. They were indignant, remember, that these disciples of Jesus were breaking can you believe it? They were breaking 4 Sabbath laws that they had made up. They were guilty of reaping, threshing, winnowing, and preparing food. I told you that God intended the Sabbath to be a blessing. And these religious people, they turned it into a burden, because that's what religious people do. They turn blessings into burdens. And then Luke tells us on a different Sabbath, Jesus went into a synagogue, and you remember there was a man there who had his right hand withered. Well, of course, the Pharisees are there too, and they watch Jesus closely to see what he would do. Jesus tells this unnamed man to stand in the center there of the synagogue in their midst, and then he tells him to do something that he's unable to do. He says, stretch out your hand, remember? But don't you know that the Word of God is also the power of God? This man stretched out his right hand by faith, just because Jesus said so. And as he obeyed the Lord by faith, then his hand was healed. The Pharisees, are they happy for this man? Are they rejoicing? No, of course not. No compassion or sympathy. Because not only do these religious people turn God's blessings into burdens, you know that they can't stand to see anybody else blessed. They turn blessings into burdens, and then they can't stand to see someone else blessed. We're told our last verse last week, they were filled with rage and discussed with one another what they were going to do to Jesus. So we pick up our study this week in verse 12. I'm so glad you came to church, and if you missed last week's study, you can pick it up on YouTube, and I believe also on our website. Verse 12, Luke 6. Now it came to pass in those days that Jesus went out to the mountain to pray and continued, notice, all night in prayer to God. And when it was day, he called his disciples to himself, and from them he chose 12, whom he named apostles. These are their names: Simon, whom he also named Peter, Andrew his brother, James and John, Philip and Bartholomew, Matthew and Thomas, James the son of Alphaeus, and Simon called the Zealot, Judas the son of James, and Judas Iscariot, notice with me closely, who also became a traitor. Did he not start off as a traitor? It says he became a traitor. Let me say a few things about Judas before we go back to verse 12. If you do research on Judas, there's a lot out there. Some really well-known commentators believe that Judas wasn't even a human being. He was a devil. Jesus called him a devil. He doesn't even call him a demon. Son of perdition, Jesus called him. I don't know that I'm on board with that. I was a literal man, and that he became a traitor. What happened? We're not really told. He called a woman a waste. Remember when she came with the alabaster box full of precious ointment? She called her worship a waste. You know, perdition means waste. Son of waste. Have you known anybody ever named Judas? Has anybody ever introduced themselves as Judas? Not even to this day, over 2,000 years later, is there anybody excited to have a baby boy and say, oh, yeah, I think we'll name him Judas? How about a dog named Judas? Like, I literally don't even know a dog named Judas. Tells you something. In verse 12, we're told it happened in those days. In what days? In the days that our Lord's ministry was growing in popularity and size, and in the days that the hostility, the jealousy, the envy, the hate of the Pharisees was also growing. Notice with me closely what the Lord does. When his ministry was growing, he prayed. When opposition was growing, he prayed. Before he chose the apostles, he prayed. So the question, how in the world can we afford not to pray? Jesus, the Son of God, prayed all night. We cannot afford not to pray. If Jesus, God's own Son, found it necessary to pray all night, I've never met a Christian who is a literal Christian, a real, honest-to-goodness Christian who has said, you know what, Johnny, I've prayed way too much. I could always increase my prayer life. How about you? We should pray with even greater fervor, I believe, and intensity. When? Well, when the ministry grows, when opposition and hostilities increase. Isn't that what we're seeing today? Hostility, anger, downright hatred. 15 years old this boy was that took a shotgun and started the shooting spree. The church should be praying more than ever before. How about when it comes time to choose leadership? Did you see Jesus, before he chose the 12, spent all night in prayer? Let me tell you quickly what's taken the place of prayer in many churches. Ready? This is just a few. I can keep you here a long time. So many things have taken the place of prayer in so many churches. One of them is committees. Committees. Who needs to pray when you have a committee? And on the committee, there's very intelligent people, PhDs and DVDs. Just brilliant people. We pick the most brilliant people in the church to be on these committees. So who needs to pray when we have brilliance? And who needs to pray when we have cleverness? Who needs to pray when we have lawyers and developers on the team? There's a committee for everything and everyone. The baking committee, the cleaning committee, the building committee, the parking lot committee, the broken window committee. I didn't even know that there was a broken window committee. In New York, many years ago, many moons ago, we were once in an old building that we shared with another church. I actually was talking to Sherry today about it very briefly. I said, honey, you remember that old building that we were in on St. Paul Street? She goes, oh my goodness, yes. I'm like, honey, do you remember the broken window? She goes, oh my Lord, yes, I do. There's a broken window in the sanctuary that was busted. Literally an entire big window, an entire pane missing. I didn't notice it until the summer was over. Fall is here. And we shared this building, much like we do here, with another church. So I went to that other church to make them aware of the broken window. And you know what they said? We'll take it to the committee. I affectionately called the committee. I didn't know the name of the committee, but I called it the Broken Window Committee. There must be a Broken Window Committee if you take this concern to a committee. So I'm waiting for a response. October rolled into November, and the window was still busted. And it's getting colder. Our energy bill, heat bill, is growing. I did something that perhaps I think most of you, as I'm looking around, would remember this. But I did something. I picked up, are you ready for this? The phone book. Do you remember the phone book? Okay, for those of you that don't know the phone book, listen, okay, it was two phone books. And this thing was like the size of this pulpit, right? And you would get them delivered to your house, like literally like on the porch or something. And you were happy to get the new phone books. There was a yellow pages and white pages. So I got the phone book, went through the yellow pages, made a couple calls, got the best estimate, got the window fixed. That was over 25 years ago. You know what? I never told them that I fixed it, that we got it fixed. I don't know if they ever noticed. And because my mind is simple and sometimes I'm just sitting somewhere and just start chuckling, I was literally chuckling today thinking like, I wonder if they ever noticed that it was fixed. I wonder if they're still discussing, voting, meeting, committees. Really? The church is substituting prayer for committees? Here's another one. Voting. You know, there's more votes cast in a church for church things than any other electoral whatever. Voting. Yeah, some churches it's voting. Voting has taken the place of praying. We vote for deacons, we vote for elders, and even pastors. The church agrees by voting. They literally cast a ballot. They'll have some pastors and they take turns preaching each Sunday, and it's whoever the audience likes best, and that's how they vote the pastor in. And oftentimes, of course, the audience, they like the dynamic speaker, the most outgoing, maybe even the best looking. The most qualified, obviously, educationally. Does he have an MDiv? That's important. If he has a degree, and he's quick-witted and funny and engaging, he's our man. Let's cast our vote. Jesus prayed all night before he chose the 12 that he called apostles. No committee, no voting. Ambassadors, that's what the word means, messengers. These are the guys that he entrusted with the life-saving gospel. Now, please listen to me. You got to get this. This is huge, important. These 12 were not first-round draft picks. You understand? Nobody would have ever picked these guys. They would have never been on a ballot of a committee. Their names would have never shown up anywhere. Can I tell you, be truly honest with you, this is the most losingest team. Group of men. To the natural eye, to the physical eye, as far as the physical eye can see, a catastrophe. You spent all night in prayer, and this is what happened? Imagine if he hadn't prayed. Folks, this isn't the dream team. This isn't a group of who's who of the day. This is the group of who's them. These men, with the exception of Judas Iscariot, they're Galileans. You remember it was Peter by the fire as he was denying the Lord. Somebody said, "This man is one of them." His speech betrays him. What does that tell you? Let me tell you what it tells you. The Galileans, they were country folk. People of the mountain. In Acts chapter 4, verse 13, we're told that Peter and John were ignorant and unlearned men. Let me tell you something. That's a very nice way of saying stupid and foolish. That was the estimation. When they looked at Peter and when they looked at John, they thought, stupid and foolish. Oh, but listen to what Paul writes in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 25 through 29. God's ways are not our ways. Paul writes, he says, "The foolish plan of God is wiser than the wisest of human plans." As I stood before the ark not too many weeks ago, to the whole world, that was a foolish plan. Oh, but the foolish plan of God is the wisest of all plans. God's weakness is stronger than the greatest of human strength. Remember, Paul writes, dear brothers and sisters, not many of you were wise according to worldly standards. Not many were powerful, and not many were of noble birth. But God chose what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong. God chose what is low and despised in the world, even things that are not, to bring to nothing the things that are, so that no human being might boast in the presence of God. The world sees this. Jesus chose the useless nothings of the world to be his apostles. That's how people are looking at it. Are you kidding me? You can't be serious. Can I remind you of something? Is it okay? Can I encourage you? Say yes if it's okay. Can I encourage you? Okay, good. That's the majority of you. Okay, good. So I'm going to encourage you. How many of you know that if Jesus chooses the team, automatically it's the winning team? Yeah, I don't care what the team looks like to the world. But listen, okay, not everybody raise their hand, that's okay. But so then let me give you the answer. If Jesus chooses the team, it is, fact, automatically the winning team. It is the winning team. Can I encourage you, if you're on Team Jesus, there's no way you're going to lose. If you're not on Team Jesus, there's no way you're going to win. Ha! I love it. We're on the winning team. We're on the winning team. Such a blessing to know, to take it in. There's no way that we can lose. But let me be honest with you. I don't know about you, but listen, it can get heavy at times. I read the Psalm of Asaph, who was surrounded by wickedness, and he saw the wicked prospering. He saw there's no pain in their life. Money is the answer for everything. They're so corrupt. They have everybody bought with money. They live luxuriously. They're not hungry. And he was so discouraged. He said, my foot nearly slipped when I saw how they prosper, and there's nothing wrong with them. Have I been living my life in holiness and sanctification for nothing? He almost slipped. Oh, but then he says, until I went into the house of God, then I understood their end. Sometimes for me, it feels like we're losing ground. As I look at the church, as I look at the world, listen, the scoreboard is what the scoreboard is. If you're watching a game and the scoreboard says 98 to 60, the players that are playing, whether it's basketball or football, whatever team sport, they're not looking at that and say, I don't receive that. That doesn't bear witness with my spirit. No, the board is what the board is. It feels like we're losing sometimes, doesn't it? Am I the only one? That's not a good feeling. I can remember in elementary school, I was the last kid picked for any team sport. Don't feel bad, sister. I'm actually better now. You gave me a sad face. I don't want you. That was a long time ago. I'm actually doing good. I'm mostly all here. Yeah, so I'm good. Don't be sad. Don't be sad. But I was never picked. No. I was the awkward kid. I was skinny, wasn't very athletic. The captains, of the teams, they would be arguing at the end. I'd be the last guy, and they'd be arguing at the end. No, I had him last time. No, you get Johnny this time. So here I am sitting, right? Here I am sitting watching these guys argue about just not wanting me on their team because I was a deficit. I didn't bring anything to the team. I was a hindrance. The message was loud and clear to me, loser. Now here, let me tell you this, another strange phenomena of today didn't exist when I was growing up. When I was growing up, there was something called winners and losers. Participation trophy? What in the world is that? If you didn't do good, you were a loser. And there's some marvelous lessons that you can learn about losing. It's actually good to lose. No participation trophies for Johnny. Just loser. We don't want you on our team. And again, sister, I'm doing fine. I have recovered completely. Oh, okay. I'm just being transparent. It's the truth. I was a loser. Yeah, a hot loser. The best at losing. You can count on me to bring the team down. You want to not score? We played this sick game called Kill the Man with the Ball in elementary school during the break. I was terrible. So you can imagine how incredibly happy I am that I'm on Team Jesus. When the Lord, see, these guys, they didn't choose themselves. The Lord, it says very clearly, the Lord chose them after he was all night in prayer. They're going to win. With the exception of Judas, you understand, Iscariot. Ask me the question, what made them the winning team? What made them Jesus' dream team? They went from nobody knows them to everybody knows them. Here is the secret sauce. It's in verse 13. Notice with me closely. Jesus called them to himself. There it is. There it is. Jesus called them to himself. How are these men changed? How are they transformed? Listen, simply by being with Jesus. He called them to himself. And they followed Jesus. They fellowshiped with Jesus. They were living with Jesus, watching Jesus, hearing Jesus, being transformed by Jesus as they were fellowshipping with Christ. I told you that Peter and John were identified as unlearned and ignorant men. But then we're told that the scribes, the religious people, told that they marveled and they took knowledge of them that they had been with Jesus. They marveled. They were like, wait a minute. We know you're Galileans. We know you're unlearned. But something's not right. And the unbeliever, folks, listen, the unbeliever took knowledge and said, you've been with Jesus. I see. You've been with Jesus. It's one thing when the unbeliever acknowledges that. I see the change. I see what happened here. So we know that these men started as nobodies, but Jesus called them to himself. Now listen close as we hear how they ended. This is how they started. This is their humble beginnings. But let me tell you how they ended. Peter and later Paul the apostle, they were both martyred in Rome about 66 AD during the persecution of Emperor Nero. Paul was beheaded. Peter was crucified upside down at his own request, since he did not feel worthy to die in the same manner as his Lord. Andrew went to the land of the man-eaters in what is now called the Soviet Union. Christians there, they claim that he was the first to bring the gospel to their land. He also preached in Asia Minor, modern-day Turkey, and in Greece, where he is said to have been also crucified. Thomas, how did he end? Remember doubting Thomas? He was probably the most active in the area of the east of Syria. Tradition has him preaching as far as India, where the ancient Christians revere him as their founder. They claim that he died there when they pierced him through with the spears of 4 soldiers. Philip possibly had a powerful ministry in Carthage in North Africa and then in Asia Minor, where he converted the wife of the Roman proconsul. In retaliation, the proconsul had Philip arrested and cruelly put to death. Matthew, the tax collector, and writer of the gospel, ministered in Persia and Ethiopia. He was stabbed to death in Ethiopia. Bartholomew had widespread missionary travels attributed to him by tradition to India, with Thomas back to Armenia and also to Ethiopia and southern Arabia. He met his death as a martyr for the gospel by being skinned alive and then beheaded. James, the son of Alphaeus, is one of at least 3 James referred to in the New Testament. There's some confusion as to which is which, but this James is reckoned to have ministered in Syria, and the Jewish historian Josephus reported that he was pushed from the pinnacle of a temple and then was stoned and clubbed to death. Simon the Zealot ministered in Persia and was killed after refusing to sacrifice to the sun god. John the beloved. Oh, he's the only one of the apostles that died of a natural death from old age. Oh, but listen, it's not because they didn't try to kill him. In Rome, they attempted to kill him by putting him in boiling oil. It didn't work, so they exiled him to the island of Patmos, where you know and I know he received the book and wrote the book of Revelation. He was a leader of the church in Ephesus and said to have taken care of Mary, the mother of Jesus, until the day she died. Judas, the son of James, is also called Thaddeus in Mark chapter 3, verse 18. He was beaten with clubs, then crucified in the city of Edessa, which is modern-day Turkey. And lastly, Judas Iscariot. We know his end, right? Paul the apostle took his place. Judas' surname of Iscariot probably indicates that he was a man from Kerioth. He thus seems to be the only one of the apostles that wasn't from Galilee. He was from the Judean area. After he betrayed Jesus, you know the story, he went and hung himself. The rope or the branch broke, and he landed on jagged rocks which split him open in the middle, and his guts gushed out. It's literally what it says in Acts chapter 1, verse 18, and Matthew chapter 27, verse 5. The apostles, these men, nobody would have ever considered them. Nobody thought much of them, but Jesus chose them. The losers became winners because they were with Jesus. Jesus called them to himself. These guys would have never won any kind of trophy on earth. Even at fishing, this was their career, and every time we see Peter, James, and John, they ain't catching nothing. No trophies on earth. But listen to what it says in Revelation chapter 21, verse 14. The wall of the city, New Jerusalem, has 12 foundation stones, and on them were written the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. Oh my goodness, that is so good. Listen, your name may not be recorded among the greats here, but it's recorded in the Lamb's Book of Life. You may not have even gotten, I didn't even get a participation trophy. Oh, but my dear friends, brothers and sisters, my name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life. The world may not have chosen you, but Christ himself. Can you rejoice with me? Am I the only one here today? We're on the winning team. We're on the winning team. Christ has chosen us. Let's read 3 more verses and then I'll let you go for today. Verses 17 through 18. And Jesus came down with them and stood on a level place with a crowd of his disciples and a great multitude of people from all Judea and Jerusalem and from the seacoast to Tyre and Sidon. They came to hear him and to be healed of their diseases. As well as those who were tormented with unclean spirits, they were also healed. And the whole multitude sought to touch him, for power went out from him, and he healed them all. So not only did Jesus pray all night because ministry and animosity was growing, not only did he pray all night because he was choosing the 12 apostles, but he prayed all night because ministry must be conducted in prayer. Period. That's it. The disciples could have asked Jesus anything. Teach us to perform miracles. Teach us to walk on water. Teach us to multiply bread and fish. Teach us, Lord, how to speak. Teach us how to teach and how to use parables and how, just teach us that. But you know what the disciples noticed? This is a big one point for the disciples, right? They saw that the power of the ministry in Jesus' life came from his time in isolation with the Father in prayer. And so what did they ask? They said, Jesus, teach us to pray. And that's how I'd like to end today. Lord, teach us to pray. We're missing so much. Why? Because we don't pray. Jesus prayed all night. We just looked at some of the reasons why he prayed all night. Lord, teach us to pray.